I'm Alex, and then this is Lauren and Caleb. We did the post-World War II American architecture. So first up we have the California Ranch. It was first built in 1932 by Cliff May in San Diego, California. It was popular from the 1940s to the 1970s, and as the name suggests, it was used in the ranching lifestyle. However, over time, it stopped being used specifically for ranching and eventually just got used for the aesthetic. Another fun fact about it was initially inspired by Mexican haciendas, which were ranch homes in like the middle of like big farms down in Mexico. If you guys have taken like AP World or something, they are, as the name suggests, most commonly located in California and along the west coast of the U.S. And also in the Southwest. Some distinguishing characteristics are they are very low to the ground. They're very like short houses, generally around 1 story. They are vernacular, and by vernacular it means that they were built of they were built of like local materials like wood or stone or anything that was like in the environment. They are anonymous to the front, by which means if you look at the front here, you wouldn't be able to tell that the back would be big and open like this. Like the front is very like inconspicuous, and it's not easy to like see the entire house from the front. But the back is very open. A lot of them center around like a landscaping feature in the back, like a pool or a garden or a patio. Generally speaking, they're L or U-shaped. They're generally not a lot of rooms like stacked up back there. It's like 1 room deep and just arranged around the landscaping feature in the back. And they're known for lots of uses of like large glass expanses, like lots of windows and like open things to let in the light. Personally, I'm a big fan of the way they center around landscaping. I just really like the nature aspect, and like you can have a pool back there. That's pretty cool. I also like the use of lots of glass, like see these skylights and stuff, and big glass like walls, so they let in lots of light. And the fact that the backyard is not visible to the street, so you can keep keep your stuff private. What I don't like is it's too short for me, too close to the ground, and I don't really like the house itself doesn't really have a whole lot on the landscaping opportunities, in my opinion. Like I'd only get this house just because I have the opportunity to have something cool in the backyard. So, and then the next style is the northwestern home style. This home style was popular around the 1930s to the 1960s and was first built in the Pacific Northwest, as the name suggests. I think it was around, and it was it was inspired by Japanese architecture and international architecture. The Japanese inspiration was like taking from the environment and having it be very like nature oriented. As it suggests, since this home style is entirely centered around a region of America, it's found in northwestern America. Some key characteristics are it is very conducive to the environment. Like everything about it was centered around the environment because the region that it's built in generally tends to be very mountainous and stuff like that. So as you can see, this one is like built into like a hillside, and a lot of them are built into the environment. Because they're very environmentally friendly, they use like a lot of local materials. So as you see, a lot of times that's wood, which was traditionally left unpainted, and stuff like that that can be found around. They also use large glass windows because since the environment was very cold, they want to let in a bunch of sunlight, and so that you can look at the nature outside. And they're also generally very asymmetrical. Like there's not a lot of symmetry because they're centered around, again, the environment. So the environment is uneven, so therefore the house is uneven. That also leads into tiered terraces. If you look, there's like different levels, just so that they can make sure that there's a full house despite unevenness in the ground. They also have a lot of like large overhangs on the sides to protect against the weather, since these are generally mountain homes. And they are also very sleek and linear. The style is also sometimes known as northwestern modern, just because of their influence from the modern style. Personally, I really like the way that they make use of the environment, that they are like there's a lot of variety because the environment changes so much. And the fact that they are very open. However, personally, I don't really like the fact that they can only be built in certain locations if you really want to like respect the style, and they can't really be built in cities. There's also not much room for like a yard or anything because it's in the middle of like a forest or whatever. And next we have functional modern architecture. Functional modern architecture began in 1920 and was popular through the 1930s. However, I'm sure you'd see a lot of it around still today. These buildings were generally not used for homes. They were generally like buildings, like for a purpose, as the name suggests. The concept of functionalism was to not have anything extra. It's supposed to show what it's used for. One term that was generally associated with it was form follows function. So it's all built around to be practical. They were actually originally associated with socialism because they were quick and easy to build and made of like easy to obtain materials. And they are most commonly they're known to be located in Germany, but in the US they're all over in like cities and stuff. Some characteristics are minimal orientation. They're basically just concrete squares, like a few ghosts short of brutalism. And they also display the raw materials. Since there's no decoration, it's just straight up no paint, no decoration, no ornamentation, none of that. Generally, they use concrete, steel, and glass, just efficient materials, and they're all generally very uniform. Square, windows, it's just a box, because they were mass-produced after the war, just for people to use conveniently. My opinion, I suppose it's practical. I do like that aspect of it. But generally speaking, I don't think it's an interesting architecture style. It's just, there's no really defining characteristics. They're all the same. It's made to be the same. It's just concrete. It looks like something you would find in like a dystopian novel. There's not really any style. There's no landscaping since they're all packed together in cities. And yeah, next is...
So the first one that I have is the solar house. So the solar houses were first built in the late 1950s to the early 1960s. The origin was they were first built in Germany and the UK. And some historical facts is that the solar houses were developed during the space age, which was when solar panels were first being invented. The solar power is the cheapest and most abundant energy source for like a house. And the creator of the solar house was George F. Taft, I think is how you say it. So some of the characteristics of the solar house, obviously, they had solar panels on the roofs. They had steep slanted roofs so that when the solar panels were laying on them, they would get a lot of sunlight and stuff. They have like a greenhouse effect, which is where they use the solar panels to take in heat. They have a heat storage system, which is this down here underneath the house, which is where they can store heat for like when it's not as sunny, so they're not getting as much sunlight. And then they have large glass windows and doors, as you'll see on some of the next slides. Just to like get in more like natural light, so they didn't have to use as many like not natural light inside the house and like waste energy and stuff like that. So here you can see like the big windows and stuff like that. And so the lights, I like that it's energy efficient. I think it's better for the environment. And I also like the modern look of some of them. So I think that's cool. But dislikes, I don't like the really slanted roof sometimes. Like this one, it looks a little disproportionate. Like it looks like the size of the house is a lot smaller compared to the roof. Solar houses are found today mostly in California and San Diego. Just because it's like really sunny there, so yeah. And then next is the A-frame. So the A-frame was first built in the mid-1950s to the 1970s. It originated in California, and some historical facts are that even though it did originate in California, they found evidences of like the Chinese using it, like the A-frame structure. Sometimes they're called roof-cut houses, and Schindler built the first like modern A-frame house, which was the one in California. So some characteristics of the A-frame house, obviously the triangular shape with the roof like that, the steep pitched roof because they almost go all the way down to the ground. The gables in the front and the back, which is like this part right here. They're mostly wood siding for more like rustic look because they're found more in like mountainous regions and stuff. And they have very large windows like around the front and like the sides and stuff. Likes and dislikes, I like the rustic look that they have, along with like the terrain that they're most common in. But I don't really like the A-frame that much because it kind of reminds me of like a tent. So I think it looks kind of, I don't know. Where are they today? They're all over the U.S., but like I said, mostly found in like mountainous and snowy regions. Because like when it snows, the slanted roof helps the snow to like slide off so it doesn't stick. And then the mobile home was most common in the 1870s. The origin was like beachfronts on the East Coast and like the West Coast and stuff like that. Historical facts, a lot of rich and famous people actually had mobile homes along with like their other houses that they would always live in. Another name for them is a manufactured home because they were built like in pieces and then they were shipped to the location so they could like build it. You could take it apart and move it. And then before the 1870s, they had horses that pulled home-like structures, but they weren't actually considered mobile homes at the time. And then some characteristics of the mobile home. Obviously, it's mobile. You can move it. They were built in pieces, like I said, so that they could be mass-produced and like moved around. They were cheap and affordable for most people, and then they were really small, and they had like removable wheels on them, so you could take the wheels and like move it, and then you could just take them out. So likes and dislikes. I like that it's cheap. I like that it's mobile. I think that's like cool aspects that we could use. And then the dislikes, I think they're too small because they're very narrow and like long, I guess. So where are they today? They're very common in Texas, but like I said, they are all over the country. And then finally is the plastic house. They first started building them in the mid to late 2010s area. The origin was Nova Scotia in Canada. Is where they built the first one. So the first guy who built it was Fernando Llanos, I think. They are energy efficient and they help to reduce the carbon footprint by using reused plastic to build the houses. So characteristics, plastic, obviously. For every 100 square meters, they said it was about 14,000 plastic bottles that they used, that they would reuse to make the material of the house. They're very cheap, they're smaller, and sometimes they can, this one's not a very good example, but they can look somewhat modern, because they can like take it apart. So, I don't know, like the material of the house. And then likes, cheap and decreasing plastic waste, because it is a problem in the world today, I guess. Dislikes, not appealing. This one, it doesn't look very good. It's just wire and plastic bottles. But where they found today, all over the country, all over the world, kind of just everywhere. They're not that common yet because they're so recent and it's not very practical, I guess. So.
And up next is the up next is the hay house, and the hay house was actually can be traced to ancient times because it's built out of straw bales, and since the start of human history, when they've been building homes, they've used their environments. They were actually used in the 1600s in Germany, and straw roofs were used in Asia. Some of the characteristics of the hay house is that it's usually small, but they are pretty cheap because the hay is pretty cheap to use for insulation for the house. They're made from agriculture byproducts from making cereals, so they're good for the environment because it reuses materials, and they're good. They're resilient against wind and fire, which is surprising. Because I like about the hay house is that they're affordable. They're durable, and they can be very well made, but they're inconsistent in style, so some are a lot uglier than others. Like you can see in this one, it's not the best looking house, but I feel like this one would look good once it's finished, so I just don't like how they're inconsistent, and I just don't like how they're pretty small usually. They're really located everywhere. They don't really have the typical region where they come from, so. Next is the Contemporary Rustic, also known as the Californian Contemporary. It was first built in the 1980s, and as the name kind of comes from, it was built in California first. Some characteristics is that it uses lots of light. It uses rustic accessories in the interiors to give a rustic feel, so you can see there's lots of just older things. So you have like these big fireplaces, but lots of wood and stone, which is pretty cool. I like how they use lots of natural light to give just a bright feel inside the homes, and they use pretty open floor plans, which I like. They're also pretty expensive. So. Things I like is how they use a lot of light, the open floor plan that they utilize, the modern design, just the bright rusticness, and the location. They're often built in more remote areas and in the mountains, and so they end up being more rural, but they can use lots of space, and the landscape around them is usually pretty cool. Only thing I dislike is that they're usually very expensive. And they're in more remote locations because you can't really build them in super compact areas because they take up a lot of space. And they're found in the western United States, and yeah, just not in very urban areas. We have the Postmodern style, which was first built in 1963 and is popular to now. It's actually not very common though, because as you can see, it's pretty bold. It's it's not something you'd expect to see in the Colorado suburbs. And it was first created in France. Some postmodern characteristics are that it utilizes a bright color palette, and what it really tries to stay away from is being pure. So you have with the last one we had that rustic contemporary style where it really tried to just look nice and clean, but as you can see with this, it just tries, it's very bold, and the shapes are very you don't see it used often in that way, so. So they use very bold shapes, and then they have often mismatching color palettes. Things I like is that they use colors that aren't a lot of times used, and they have a lot of shapes that aren't really used, but I also don't like how they use shapes that don't work together. I mean, they have these big towers in this one, but then they have just triangles and big squares coming out. It doesn't always fit well, and it oftentimes seems like it doesn't really have a sense of theme, and that it's just kind of a big jumble of everything, really. And it's not really made in a certain geographic area, but it's only found in urban areas because you're not going to find it in rural areas or suburban areas. And that's it.